This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by Alex Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
We went 40 minutes without even mentioning Drake May's name, I think.
I think I talked about him very briefly.
That's what we do here. We talk about the
third running back.
The third running back and the nose tackle. And you can
And
do
the maybe linebacker safety guy.
and us trying to put our coaches' hats on and talk about Marte Mapu's role. And you can save your quarterback talk.
That's what we
Take
do.
it elsewhere.
Where's our awards?
Okay. Where is our awards? That's a good question. I feel like we deserve an award for not leading with quarterbacks on this show, and we're probably not going to lead with quarterbacks again. Like we'll get to the quarterbacks.
We'll get to the quarterback.
Don't get me wrong, but we're probably going to talk about defensive tackles. Honestly, off the top of the show. So Evan Lazar, Alex Barth with you for the next couple of hours. The phone lines are open. We'll get to you guys in a bit. We're going to probably run through some bookkeeping notes, as I like to say, and then also give some early takes before we pick up the phone. So just stay patient with us there. But before we do that, let's pay some of the bills and say, hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals for the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places. And Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. So we just watched the 7th training camp practice for your New England Patriots out at Gillette Stadium. A very, very hot day 7 here in Foxborough. This was, not that anybody cares, but this was the hottest day of the camp by far.
It's supposed to be hotter tomorrow.
Yeah, this was true training camp weather, where it was hot as heck out there, and shells in helmets today. But honestly, I feel like, especially for the passing game, like it's not all that different. Like we're not in OTA mode where there's no pads whatsoever and we're in shorts and a t-shirt. It's like you're in shells, so not quite as big as your normal shoulder pads, but shoulder pads of some sort. You just aren't in the full body armor. So it's not all that different, I would say, than the fully padded practices in the pass game. Obviously, the run game is a little bit different, but we still saw a lot of pass game today. We'll talk about that. But off the top, I do want to get to some news items. Where do you want to start? So Judon or Godchaux? I think Judon's probably more pertinent to today. So Judon was out there at Patriots practice today. He did participate. He was a participant in practice, although I didn't see him out there a ton. Like, he was out there, and it wasn't that he wasn't not participating. But I wouldn't say that it was 100% either.
Right.
But he was a full participant just in terms of all the drills. And he was back out there. Judon Mayo, before practice, mentioned that they had some sort of meeting, the two of them. It didn't necessarily, and this is purely speculative on my part, reading between the lines, it didn't necessarily feel contractual that they were talking about. Like, it didn't feel like they were in a negotiation room with each other. It more felt like, how do we amicably move forward for now?
Just airing things out.
Yeah. And he said they had a great conversation, told us before practice that he expected Judon to practice, and Judon did in fact practice. So long story short, long-winded opening here. Godchaux gets paid. Judon's still looking for his. Where do the Patriots go from here after Monday's dust up with Judon Mayo, Elliott Wolf, Matt Groh, and then Judon leaving practice and then coming back today?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, or probably more like a $14, $15, $16 million question. Like, I don't know. You walk away from what happened on Monday, and then I think it was the right move to not have him out there Tuesday, let the temperature come down. But then yesterday he's on Twitter. There's a report that they had offered him a contract, which apparently wasn't true. And it's just like, there's clearly issues here. There's clearly deep issues here. Where do you go? But he gets back out there today. Based off what Judon Mayo said, I mean, the vibe I kind of got from that, and I think he left it open a little to interpretation. That was probably on purpose. But the vibe I got from that was kind of just, we're going to forget about it, right? It happened. We're just not going to mention it. We're going to move on. And that's in the past. And that's probably the only way to do it if you're going to keep him here, because you had a player just openly subordinate in practice. Yeah. And to then turn around and reward that guy sets quite the precedent. So Look, they're going to have to get something done. Like, he's clearly not going to play under his current contract. I think and by the way, I thought this was best for both sides before Monday. Figure out some sort of Band-Aid to get through the rest of this year, and then at the end of the season, you go your separate ways. I think that's what's best for both parties now more than ever.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been saying for a while now that my solution to this problem for the Patriots is going the route of tacking on an incentive package onto his current contract that would be likely to be earned for him. Technically, this is kind of confusing minutia, but technically they would be not likely to be earned just because of how little he played last year. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like if you play more games than you did last year, well, odds are he's going to do that. If you had more sacks than you did last year, odds are he's going to do that. Maybe there's a bigger kicker for like double-digit sacks, Pro Bowl, something like that, and you go that direction, and that way it gets him on board for the short term. Maybe you do revisit a trade at the deadline if you're out of it, which some expect them to be. If they're, I think the deadline's right around Halloween, right? It's like November. It's actually, I think it's on Election Day this year. It's like early November, and maybe 7-8 weeks into the season. If you're 2-6 at that point, and it's really a complete reset, rebuild year, then maybe you look to trade him to a contender at that point. The Niners call or Cincinnati calls or whatever, and you're able to deal him at that point. That way he gets to a contender. Maybe they work out an extension with him once he gets to his new landing spot, and he's probably more likely to earn all those incentives because he's going to go play real football down the stretch.
Right.
So everybody in that case is somewhat happy. I understand from his perspective that he probably wants more long-term security than that, but the reality is that it sets him up to hit the open market next year. If he has a good year this year, he might get that, Zadarius Smith contract, like a 2-year, $25 million deal, maybe more.
Like he could even go and do the Jadeveon Clowney pass rush for hire thing, where he's just signing 1-year deals with contenders every year. Yeah.
So the good news is in the short term, very, very short term, is that it seems like him and Mayo have come to an agreement that Matthew Judon is not going to be, hopefully not going to be in a distraction like he was the other day. And we've gotten to that point. Related to that, obviously, is the news yesterday, which when Drew Rosenhaus was here the other day, you could smell something was coming, right? Yeah. It seemed pretty obvious. And we all kind of saw this coming, but Devon Godchaux signs a 2-year extension with the Patriots. He seems happy. Spoke after practice today. Like he said, not as happy as I could have been because everyone always wants more money. We want more money in our jobs. He wants more money in his. But he seems taken care of for the short term as well. Not even about the process of how we got here. I think we're over that now. But just what is your impression of paying Devon Godchaux? And we should mention that this deal is the money that is going to get pushed to 2025 is expected to be light, right? Like it's not going to be a significant amount on their 2025 cap in terms of guaranteed money, but you are committed to Devon Godchaux for this year, and if there's a decent amount of guaranteed money next year, a chunk, I should say, then you probably have him on your roster in 25 as well.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about this as I did about the Ramondre Stevenson contract, where I don't know if I would have done it. They talk about being more aggressive, a little bit older guy, or scheme specific or situation specific player. Not that Ramondre is, but at the end of the day, it's just like those are the reasons why I maybe would have. And you can get good defensive tackles. Like I maybe would have moved on, but it's not enough money for me to get worked up about it. Like I don't think they handcuffed themselves really at all with this contract.
Yeah. If
he's a good player, it's going to look brilliant. If he continues to be a good player for them, if not. It's not a ton of money. The term's not a lot. They absolutely have the flexibility to go in another direction if they need to go in another direction. So, I don't know. I don't mind it. Like, I don't hate the move. I probably wouldn't have done it, but I also don't think there's really any significant downside there.
So I feel two ways about this, and like my glass half full and my glass half empty take on it. My glass half full take on it is exactly what you just said, which is right now, according to Over the Cap, and this didn't necessarily factor in the Godchaux extension yet when I looked at it, but it's not the Godchaux extension is not going to take them from $78 million in cap space next offseason to 40. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? So we're talking about something that's marginal. So let's just call it north of $70 million in cap space next year. And that's a luxury of having a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, but it's also the reality of the fact that you don't have a ton of top-end talent that are high-priced players.
It's that, but at the same time, they've gotten all these extensions done. Like, who are their pending free agents?
Yeah, there are.
It's like Jonathan Jones and...
Yeah.
Is that it?
Judon,
right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, so the point is, on the glass half full side, is that it will not be... Their cap is not going to be a problem next year for them adding significant talent to this roster. Now, I can't sit here on the show and promise that the cash isn't going to be the problem, right? But the cap is not going to be the problem. So if you're one of these people that are like worried that they paid Devon Godchaux and now they're not going to go out and trade for Brandon Ayuk in the offseason or sign T. Higgins in the offseason, those two things are not necessarily directly correlated unless you're a cash person. You're worried about Robert Kraft literally cutting a check for Brandon Ayuk. If you're in that school of thought, then they've spent some money this year. They're top 10 right now in cash spent for this team this year. They're going to be a little bit higher now with Devon Godchaux's deal and probably a little bit higher with Matthew Judon's deal if it does get done. So there are some concerns about it from that respect. From a player perspective, like an on-the-field scheme perspective, I actually don't hate keeping him around. They were the number 3 run defense in the league by DVOA last year, one of the best in the league at stopping the run. He plays a very important role. We know that. He's a 2-gapping nose tackle. I guess Jeremiah Farms was probably the closest thing that they had to him on the roster, but I think there's a drop-off there between Jeremiah Farms and Devon Godchaux. So what I'm getting at with that is that I look at it almost like it's a boat, like it's a canoe. We're riding this
different kind of boat than the boat of the mystery box.
Yeah, we're riding this canoe up the Charles River, and the Patriots canoe has holes in it. It's taking on water, right? Quarterback until proven otherwise, receiver until proven otherwise, left tackle until proven otherwise. We have this boat with all these holes. If they started to tear down this roster and they take the Devon Godchaux piece out, and they take the Kyle Duggar piece out, and they take the Mike Onwenu piece out, and they take the Ramondre Stevenson piece out, now all of a sudden your canoe is not just taking on water, now you're underwater. And I think what they've done is that they've reinforced what's left of the canoe. And
that's a good way to put it.
And now what they have to do is they have to go out and plug the holes that are already pre-existing. And to that end, they haven't gotten there yet. They're not where we haven't checked that box yet. But a lot of these people that are lamenting extending or re-signing players that were part of a 4-win football team last year, well, you have to also look at it from the perspective of if you take all those players out of this roster, then you have even more holes and even further you're even further away from being competitive at that point. So that's how I look at Devon Godchaux too. You know Devon Godchaux is a good early down run stuffing nose tackle in your defense. If you pull that Jenga piece out, now the tower starts to get a little wobbly. Right. So that's a big part of it too. So I don't hate. I think the Ramondre comp is good too. Like I don't love paying a situational player in today's NFL when the situation is stopping. I don't love it, but at the same time, I can understand where they're coming from. That they didn't want to create another hole in the boat.
Right.
So that's where we're at with that. Last bit of news here, right before we got on the air, actually, Mike Purcell, who is I
think it's Purcell.
Purcell.
I'm pretty sure it's Purcell.
We'll get the Purcell. So Mike Purcell was with the Denver Broncos last year, had a cup of coffee with the Patriots in the 2017 season on their practice squad. But this is a guy with some NFL production and is an NFL player. Played a decent amount of snaps. I think it was 400 and something snaps last year for the Denver Broncos. So when I look at this deal with him, he's a bigger guy. This isn't a Daniel Quale, right? This is a 320 pound
listed at 328.
Yeah, interior defensive lineman. I look at their base front, their base defensive line on first down, and when you pull the Christian Barmore piece out of that, which is just We haven't talked about that actually on the show.
I mean, there's not much, we're going to address the football side of it. Like, it sucks. I hope the dude on his 25th birthday, man.
Yeah.
Just hope he's doing okay.
Yeah, I hope he's doing all right. And from the football side of it, like you said, it sucks. When you pull him out, though, just, again, no one's Christian Barmore. No one's saying is Mike Purcell is Christian Barmore, okay? But when I did this yesterday, when they re-signed Godchaux, I tweeted out what I thought was probably going to be their starting base nickel, their 3-3-5 base nickel team. And that weak side 3-4 end spot, you have Dietrich Wise and you have Devon Godchaux. Those two guys are probably going to be on the field on first down. That third spot, is it Keon White? Is it Armon Watts? Is it Jeremiah Farms? Is it Daniel Aquale? Like, that spot is right now because Barmore was supposed to be there. And now that Barmore's not there, at least for the foreseeable future, there's a pretty massive void to fill there. A guy like Purcell, to me, is someone that can come in and stop the run a little bit on first down so that maybe you can go to, like, still a pretty big front in that odd front, right? Where you still have a 320-pound guy, similar to maybe more so to like a Lawrence Guy than a Christian Barmore. And that to me is what that spells is that, okay, with Keon White, splashier player, but 280 pounds, on first down teams are going to target him in the run game. They're going to run right at him, right? That's going to be problematic for us. We don't really think that Aquale or Armon Watts are early down players. You think of those guys more as interior pass rushers in obvious passing situations. So a guy like Purcell, I think, can come in and be sort of that base 3-4 end, which they are missing now, obviously, without Barmore.
And look, he can play on the nose, too, if you need him, and gives them some depth with Jeremiah Farms, really their only other nose tackle. Like I said, like Daniel Aquale's here, but he's more of an attacking upfield, aggressive defensive tackle. I'd put Tristan Hill in that category too. Yeah. I'm honestly not as familiar with Tristan Hill, but like 310 pounds. He's not a nose.
No, and he looks like a leaner guy.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't look
There might be some upside. Like he's an interesting player. He's a second-round pick.
Yeah, we definitely talked about Tristan Hill in that draft, that he was 100%, guy that we kicked around.
But if you're talking about, I always go back to Danny Shelton. Yeah. Do you have just a big body you can put in the middle and get in the way? And I mean, that's Devon Godchaux, but if, you want depth there, it's physical position, or like you said, you want to put another guy on the edge. It was really Jeremiah Farms. It's the only other guy they've had in that mold. And at the very least, Purcell gives you another option. Whether he makes the team or not, he's certainly somebody I think would be a practice squad candidate.
Yeah.
If they end up sticking with Farms on the roster, but gives them another big body in the middle.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Last bit of, I think we covered all of it. Oh, David Andrews back at practice today. That's good to see. His wife actually just, I don't know which social media platform, they all blend together. I think it was Instagram. She posted a quick update about their son and said that he's out of the hospital, and it seems like he just had a virus and he's going to be okay. So that's great news to hear. But that's a way of telling you that this was a personal reason that he missed the last couple practices and not a football reason.
He said that during his availability to his son was in the hospital. So I think he said he was expecting him home today.
Yeah.
So good sign.
So this wasn't anything physical with David Andrews. So he was back out there again today. And then you mentioned in the open we had this great Marte Mapu segment where we had this super hybrid role planned for Marte Mapu that was going to make him a star, and then he has some sort of injury that has not practiced in a couple of days now, and has been out there taking mental reps, but has not actually participated in practice since when? I want to say we're going on 3 or 4 practices now that he hasn't been practicing. And that for him, we're going to do 3 up, 3 down as well from our first 7 days of camp. But that one it's tough as a second-year player trying to make a roster, trying to carve out a role to not be out there. And if you feel for him because he looks like it visually,
right?
When you watch him out there at practice, how frustrated he is that he can't be out there. So that's a little bit of bookkeeping. I do want to talk about the quarterbacks before we get into the emails and the calls. And again, see your calls up there. We're going to get you guys in a second. 855-PATS-500 is the phone number, and webradio at patriots.com is the email address. But I want to talk a little bit about the quarterbacks. And I'm just going to come out and say it. Ben Volen of the Boston Globe has caused quite a stir, I would say, is fair to put it, because he wrote in his analysis that he feels as though Joe Milton has been better than Drake May in training camp, and he said that you wouldn't know which one was the 3rd overall pick and which one was the 6th round pick. Now, there is definitely some element to truth that Joe Milton has been better than expected. I think he has. I think that's how I would put it. He's been better than I expected. And he, no doubt, is a terrific quarterback from a physical tools perspective. That arm is as advertised, and maybe then some. Yeah,
do you understand now why I was kind of geeked up about him?
It's and granted, I'm not an elder statesman yet, so it's my 7th training camp. I'm not someone that's seen 30 of these or something like that. But that's the livest arm I've ever seen, and it's not just the deep ball. It's the way he can drive the ball.
He had a throw today where it was like a 15-yard throw, but he had this tiny window to put it in, and just got it there.
Yeah, the ball when we say. Use one of the scouting cliches, and we say the ball jumps out of his hand.
Explodes out of his hand.
This guy, the ball explodes out of his hand like a freaking cannon. Absolutely. And there's no doubt about it. Now, we talked about this a little bit on Patriots Unfiltered after the draft, and maybe we kicked it around here too. This is exactly what I was concerned about going in. And it's not a shot at Volen, but when you watch these two guys in practice, there isn't a big difference from a physical tools perspective in the two guys. And we knew that coming in because his nickname is literally Bazooka Joe.
Right.
So we knew he was going to look impressive in the red non-contact jersey when he has a huge arm. He's 6'5", 235 pounds out there doing backflips in full pads. He's an impressive athlete. There's no doubt about that. And I sort of expected this to happen. But at the same time, I don't think that all the worries about Drake May, I don't think are necessarily where I'm at with him. I think the biggest thing is that just to kind of spell it out. This offense that they're running with Alex Van Pelt reminds me, and really the bones of their passing game have pretty much lined up exactly to Mike McCarthy's offense. And that's obviously where Van Pelt learned it from in Green Bay. They are a West Coast offense. They are a timing-based passing game. Now, they have the under center stuff, the play action stuff, the boots, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about when it's 3rd and 6, when they're in the gun, they're passing the football for real. They are a timing and rhythm based pass game. It's West Coast. It's 5-step drop, 3-step drop, get the ball out, and that was something that we knew coming in with his footwork and with his rhythm and his drops that Drake May was going to need to work on. And the things that I saw from him earlier in the week, and it was better today, and I want to get to that.
He was better today.
The things that I was seeing from him earlier in the week were a quarterback that was still trying to time up everything, and that wasn't necessarily seeing the field quickly enough or seeing it well enough because of the fact that this offense is very much a rhythm-based offense. I think that's why it's looked at times that Joe Milton has been ahead of him. It's also looked very clear to me that Jacoby Brissett is
Jacoby Brissett's also
leading the way.
So I think a lot of this has to do, and look, Drake May struggled the last 2 days. He was better today, and I don't want to take away from that, but I think some of this also has to do with compared to expectations.
Yeah.
Joe Milton has been better than expected.
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett has been better than expected. Drake May has not done as well as expected. But the difference is, especially when it comes to May and Milton, Joe Milton's bar was not nearly in the same place as Drake May's bar.
It's a good point.
And I also think when it comes to Brissett, you hear about the gap, and people talk about the gap between May and Brissett, and it being bigger than we expected, and it is bigger than we expect, but that's not just because of Drake May. I would argue that's more because of Jacoby Brissett and him exceeding expectations than it is where Drake May is at. So it's just kind of this perfect storm of Joe Milton hasn't been better than Drake May, I don't think. When you factor in the reps he's getting, who he's going with, et cetera, all of that. But Joe Milton, compared to his expectations, does look more impressive than Drake May compared to his. If you flip them, we'd be panicking about Joe Milton right now, and we'd be saying Drake May is holding his own. So it's a different...
They had a different bar.
Right. There's context there. When you say Joe Milton's been better than Drake May, there is a context in which that's true. I just don't think it's the context that's relevant from a football standpoint.
Yeah, I would also say that to me, just charting some of the plays that they ran for both guys, I do see a little bit of a difference in the plays that they're asking.
That's
Joe Milton
when I'm talking
run.
about like the kind of reps. Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't put Joe Milton under center nearly as much as they've done with Drake. Drake May, to me, is running the full gamut of the Alex Van Pelt offense, and they're going to see instead of adding, if they decide to start Drake May, or at what point they do decide to start Drake May this year, I believe they're going to subtract from this point. So they threw it all at him, and to see what sticks. And then let's say come week 1 against the Bengals, for whatever reason, whether he outplays Brissett's not available, whatever, they have to play him in week 1 against the Bengals. You're probably going to get a stripped down version of what the birth of their offense actually is.
Right.
And then they'd have a script where they would only call plays, the 15 to 20 plays that he feels comfortable running at this point, instead of giving him the full gamut. Whereas with Joe Milton, I've seen a lot more of the type of stuff he was more doing at Tennessee, like spread, RPO, that kind of stuff.
You think we see the wide splits in a preseason game?
No, but you brought up the preseason, and I think that's important. I'm sure Drake May will play in the preseason. But my guess is that in order to have Joe Milton succeed in the preseason, this is how they're going to call it, right? They're going to call it with a little bit more gun, a little bit more RPO, a little bit more Tennessee style, college style. Whereas they really want Drake May operating their full gamut of their pro style system.
Yep.
So it's a little bit different. It's not apples to apples in terms of what they're being asked to do, who they're playing with, all those kinds of things. But it is fair to say that Drake has, I want to say disappointing, like underwhelming, disappointing. Like those are the kind of the words I'm thinking, because it's not been terrible. And I do think it's important to say that he's been better today, or he was better today.
Just to that point, I think some of it is how you phrase, again, like how you phrase it, because I've heard behind schedule used a lot.
Yeah.
If we're talking about, and I know you want this,
yes,
but if we're talking about week 1 and him starting week 1, yes, Drake May is behind schedule. If the plan is for him to be the starter week 1, he's behind schedule. But the reality is that's probably not the plan. And you can argue it shouldn't be. If the plan is for him to take over at some point during the season, he's about where he should be. Like, it's a learning process, right? And so I feel like a lot of people are disappointed because they heard you and others like you gassing up week 1. It's on the table. He should be the guy. I don't want to waste time with Jacoby Brissett. You're not alone in this. I'm using you as an example. I know Jim Murray's been big on this too.
I'll take responsibility for this.
But
I will.
So when you hear that,
I got a little overzealous.
So you saying the whole thing about, with Joe Milton, they're just going to see the shiny toy and it's going to be a problem for Drake May. You're not innocent in all this. When you look,
I wasn't wrong about them seeing the shiny toy with Joe Milton, by the way.
Okay, but you fed the fire.
But I was 100% right about it.
When you set the expectation for week 1, then, you look at the performance he's had the last few days and you say, he's not going to be ready. He's probably not going to be ready for week 1. He's playing catch-up at this point in order to be ready for week 1. When you look at it and say, all right, can he get in there by the end of October? Yeah, that's still very much on the table. That timeline hasn't necessarily been knocked loose or anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's where some of the panic comes from, too. People are just working on an unrealistic timeline.
So can I push back a little bit on the panic word?
Yeah.
Not at you specifically, but just if it's like this in 2 weeks, I won't be panicked, but I will definitely have my foot on the brake pedal, right? And say, all right, we got to be realistic about this. He's not close. He's going to have to sit.
So you're still not ruling out week 1?
No, because I still feel like a lot can change because days are, it's not, develop's not, development
you
is
want
not
the Mac
linear.
Jones Giants practice. That's what you're holding out hope for, is the Mac Jones Giants practice.
I guess you can say I'm holding out hope for it, but the reality is that that's very much in play. And it's just one day today, but we already saw him make some incremental improvements today. Today he He checks into a blitz, cover zero beater, gets them into a perimeter screen, gets dapped up by Jacoby Brissett afterwards.
Wish Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, he hits they get him under center, and he hits the corner out to Mitchell Wilcox off play action, which is
it's a really good throw.
It's a flood concept, vertical clear out, corner out, fills in underneath it. I could pull up cut-ups off my laptop of him doing it at North Carolina. I probably have 20 of them, right? Like, that was a throw that he loved to throw at North Carolina, especially going into the field, on the far hash, because he has all this space to just kind of layer the ball into.
Right.
Very good throw for him that he loves throwing. In sevens, he hits LaMichael Petaway coming across the field on a nice throw.
Petway.
Did I say Petaway again?
Yep.
Petway coming across the field. I'm not a big sevens guy. I don't really care too much about what he does in sevens.
But you're going to use it to help your argument.
But it helps my argument, absolutely. But
we do. It's our job.
You're seeing these little incremental improvements. Now, if he comes out tomorrow and it's just this seesaw, this rookie roller coaster, and he bombs tomorrow, then I'll go back to saying, all right, let's put our foot on the brake pedal. But even though we're not, I think it's fair to say we're not early anymore, but we're still not done in terms of training camp. And it's all building up in my mind to the preseason game and into the joint practice with the Philadelphia Eagles. Those games in the joint practice, which we'll see plenty of Drake May in, those are going to determine whether or not he's truly ready to start early. It's not going to be these practices that we're watching right now when they're laying base stuff and they're laying foundation and all that kind of stuff. The last thing I'll say about it, and he almost did it today, and I almost jumped out of my seat, and then he pulled it down and ran with it, and it was killing me. It's like, let it go. He was rolling to his right. He had Juju Smith-Schuster downfield with in single coverage, no safety. The safety was on the other side of the field. And he was rolling to his right. In his head, I knew he was thinking of launching it off platform, right? Like true Tar Heels style, just one of those Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes off platform throws that we know are in his bag. And he tucked it and ran with it. And I don't know if that was because it's a drill and that wasn't the progression and yada, 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 or what the reason was behind it. But when they get into the preseason games, I'm allowing for the fact that it might look like he's a rookie and he's not ready. But I'm also allowing for the fact that some of that playground football stuff, some of that just being an athlete and going out there and slinging it, that might come into play a little bit more when we get into the actual games than what they're doing here in practice. So to go back to the West Coast offense thing, they're running a timing-based West Coast offense where they're asking Drake May to execute these plays in structure. Like they want this to hit how it's drawn up in the playbook. Here's your 5 or 7 step drop. Here's your progression read. 1, 2, 3 and out, right? Like that's what they're looking at right now from Drake May, where I feel like as a quarterback, that was going to be a work in progress for him. Footwork, timing, rhythm, anticipation, like those types of things were not going to come to him overnight. That was going to be a repetition and a build-up. So in 2 weeks, if we get to the point where Drake May is still looking like he looked earlier this week, I will come on this show and I look at you and I would say I was wrong. I was too overzealous. I got too excited, right? Right now, I'm still holding out hope. I still feel like that this could still, like that light could just kind of switch on for him and we could be looking at a different player in a couple of weeks. But you're right. The stuff that I was saying before, I'm looking wrong right now about him being able to start week 1. But I also think that Jacoby Brissett deserves some credit for that.
Absolutely.
What have you seen from Jacoby Brissett? Might as well put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing flashy. I don't think he's going to come out and win MVP. I don't think he's going to come out and throw for 5,000 yards. And maybe this is just having watched this offense the last 2 years and where the bar is. He gets him in and out of the huddle. He gets him up and down the field. And there's a bunch of different conversation here, right? We can talk about the offensive line, the top offensive line, and they changed it today. But before today, they had a consistent group.
Yeah.
Brissett had time. He was making the right reads. He was delivering the football. Like, it was functional. And again, shouldn't be that high of a bar.
It is a high bar.
But it is a functional, professional operation. There were a couple throws there he made that you're like, oh, okay. I didn't realize he had that in his bag.
Especially that was the first day in pads.
Yeah.
He threw the one to Baker and Thornton within like I don't know, a sequence of like 5 or 6 reps.
Yeah, he dropped one in the bucket of Thornton, and then he made a throw to Baker. Like, he can do some of that off-platform, off-schedule stuff, too. Let's not act like he's a statue in the pocket, right? So
he's not a runner, but he's definitely someone that can move around.
He's not going to run. He's not going to scramble, but he can throw on the run,
Agreed.
and he can throw off-platform when he needs to. And he's done some of that. Again, I'm not saying he's out here looking like Patrick Mahomes, but using that word expectations again, from what I was expecting, it's one level above that. Look, the guy's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I feel like he gets talked about as a washout.
Yeah.
He's a starting caliber quarterback. Now, he's not necessarily at the caliber where he's not a franchise quarterback. He's not a guy where if he's your starter, you're locking him in, set it and forget it.
Right.
But again, I would say he's a top 20 starting quarterback in the NFL. It might be like 19, 20.
Yeah.
But
maybe. I mean, in Cleveland in 22, and I know everybody points that is not anti-Brissett, but just on the other side, points to his record in Cleveland.
Yeah.
So he started 11 games. I think they were 4-7.
Nobody's
in those
record
games.
in Cleveland counts. It's Cleveland.
Okay, well, yeah, they were good last year. But besides the point, right?
Yeah, the one year they don't have any quarterbacks, they're good. That's just classic Browns.
Statistically speaking, he was decent with the Browns 2 years ago in this offense. And the one thing with Brissett that is definitely there, in that season with Cleveland in 22, he was 10th in the league in big-time throw rate. Like, this guy can make some of those franchise quarterback throws. Now, is it consistent on a Mahomes level, or is it the other elements of his game? Are they consistent? Not necessarily, and that's probably why the record reflects that he's not, this franchise guy. But he was up there in the league that year in the amount of impressive, PFF calls them big-time throws. You want to call them franchise quarterback throws, wow throws, whatever. Those types of throws that were like he made the other day with, the drop it in the bucket to Tyquan's a great throw. The laser to Javon Baker against cover 2 in the hole. Good throw. Like, those are throws that I would log and PFF would log as BTTs. Those are big-time throws. Now, he's had struggles with consistency and, playing 4 full quarters and like all that kind of stuff. But, just as an example, remember when the Browns and the Bills had to play that game in Detroit because there's like some storm or something like that? Regardless, they played the game in Detroit. Go watch that film for Jacoby Brissett in 2022. Browns-Bills. He's lighting the world on fire in the first half of that game. Like, he looks like a legitimate quarterback in that game. And I'm not ruling that out this year, that he's going to have moments, that he could have moments like that. Will it result in wins and losses? I don't know. But I think he could have moments of those types of things, and that could be enough to keep Drake May on the bench. And whether you want to call that a good thing or a bad thing is up to you. Like, in some ways, it's buying the Patriots time to allow Drake May to develop behind the scenes. In some ways, you wish that Drake May would take it, right? Right. But we're not going to be able to see that once camp ends and we're closed out of practice. So that's where we're at with the quarterbacks. I am still... There's no way I'm coming off the Drake May train after 7 practices in 2 impacts.
I'm not expecting you to come off the train, and I'm not either. Like, I still like the pick. I still think he's the right guy. I still think he has a chance to be a true difference-making quarterback in this league. I just don't think he's going to be that week 1 of the 2024 season, and that's perfectly okay. The worst thing you can do, the worst thing that could happen, is he's not that guy for week 1 of the 2024 season, yet you put him out there and try to make him be that anyway before he's ready, because that's how you ruin a guy's confidence and you create bad habits.
Okay, so let me ask you this, though.
Yeah.
Let's say they decide that they feel like organizationally, and they probably won't feel this way because Elliott comes from the Green Bay Packers and that whole school of thought of, Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love and like these guys that have sat, right? So I don't think that this is how they're going to view it, but just for the sake of the argument or the discussion, let's say they feel like it's better for him to learn on the job. That's the issues that he has are only going to be fixed with game reps, right? And only be fixed with playing. So it's better for him to learn on the job, but we're going to have to pare down the playbook. And not necessarily that we're only going to have him throwing, 5-yard passes. I'm just saying we're going to have to manage what he's doing. And a lot of that could be a lot of play action, right? Like, that always helps for quarterbacks. And bootlegs, they're getting him outside the pocket, which will help, now you're only reading one side of the field instead of these full field progressions. Like, all these little things that they could do to pare down the playbook to the point where they're not asking him to carry the world on his shoulders. Would you be against that line of thought?
Yes, and maybe some of this is just the way you put it. Maybe so, but you're talking about learning on the job, right? So that implies he's not ready. That implies there's a chance that even doing this is not going to be enough. I've said this since the beginning. This is my biggest take on Drake May and when he should start. You cannot, under any circumstance short of major injury, pull him. Once he is your starter, he is your starter. You cannot get to week 3 and realize, oh, crap, he's not ready, and go back to Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
That is the most destabilizing thing you can do for the organization. So if you're doing that because you feel he will be, not can be, will be competitive in that setting, you could sell me on it. If you're doing that because, well, this is the only way we're going to get him on the field, then no. Because that means he's not ready to be on the field.
Yeah.
And you can't put him out there and then realize we've made a terrible mistake. He's not ready, because you can't bench him. So that would scare me a little bit, yes.
Okay, that's fair enough. I just feel like, to me, all the things that I've seen him have some trouble with in these practices are all the things that we talked about pre-draft or some of his weaknesses.
None of this is a surprise, by the way.
Right, that's what I'm getting at, is that's why I'm not panicking. Not because A, you shouldn't panic after 7 freaking practices, people. Like, let's calm down. But B, the other reason why I'm not panicking is because we knew that operating in structure, rhythm, footwork, timing, anticipation, all these types of boxes were all the things that he needed to work on from the college game. Like, if you thought that he was going to come in and he was going to, be this efficient quarterback right off the jump, then that's not the guy that they drafted. Like, we knew that. So I wonder if there is a school of thought that says that the only way that he's going to learn, or only way that they're going to train him up in those areas, is playing. And at that point, then you have to figure out a way to get him on the field on Sundays and not shatter his confidence completely, which would mean probably going in with a pared down playbook.
But at that point, just don't.
Right, but how is he going to get the reps? Because if you're getting Jacoby Brissett ready to play the game,
right,
he's going to have to get the reps in practice. You might be able to get some reps for Drake May in practice.
Mental reps. They've hyped up that VR thing. Like, you just got to figure it out.
In the VR headset.
I would be giving him more reps with the starters now for that exact reason.
Yeah, I would. I think we all would love to see that.
And Mayo said today it was going to happen. He didn't say when, but he did say it's going to happen.
Yeah, we would all love to see that. All right, let's take some of these phone calls, and then we'll do our 3 up, 3 down, and we got some emails as well. So Aiden is in Brighton. What's up, Aiden?
Hello?
Hey.
You guys hear me?
Hey.
Yeah, you're on. What's up?
Hey, love the show, guys. Thanks so much. Just shout out nerds everywhere for Brit. But
Thank you.
really quick, I wanted to ask about one of the best players on defense. Kyle Duggar, I feel like around the league, he's compared nationally the most to Fred Warner. And I personally want him to move to middle linebacker. I think for 3 reasons. 1, I think get your best player closer to the ball, he'll make more plays. 2, he has this kind of like Lawrence, him and Ryan Shazier kind of vibe with Jawan Bentley that I really like, and I think that it would even out the safety room a lot better in terms of their skill sets matching up on the field, having Jalen Hawkins in more of a free safety role. So I just wanted to get your opinion on whether or not he could do it and how you think that would fit with the defense. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Thanks, Aiden. Thanks for the call. That's an interesting theory. I could see it in certain situations, like if you wanted to put him at the second level of the defense on a 3rd and long, or a 2-minute or something like that, where he's like basically just playing coverage linebacker at that point. And he mentions Fred Warner, who's an all-around demon, but like maybe that sort of element to Fred Warner's game on 3rd and 8, he could play there and make it work. As an every down linebacker, I think the biggest thing is that they would have to change how they play up front to have a 215, 220-pound guy playing at the second level. And this is what we've always talked about with getting faster and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to be like a space editing, 2-gapping, whatever you want to call it, odd front defense, that the reason why they have bigger backers like Tavai Bentley, those players, is because they have to play in a phone booth and take on guards and take on lead blockers and take on guys in the trash in the trenches. And you're going to get run over like a bowling pin if you're too small playing in that spot. So that's a big reason why they still deploy like a Bentley or even a Tavai when he's at the second level, is because their system asks them to take on mostly guards often, and you have to have some size, obviously, to do that. I also just would say, to his point, almost, their like box safety, if you want to call it that, or their hybrid safety role, has so much linebacker overlap that they're playing a ton of linebacker style reps playing in those spots.
Right.
That it's almost like it's almost, we're almost arguing about nothing, right? Like where we're saying he needs to play linebacker.
He's playing like a linebacker, whether he's in those
Yeah.
positional meetings or not. That's how they're using him.
Right. Exactly. All right. Patty is in Agawam. What's up, Patty?
What's up, guys? Can you hear me
Hey.
okay?
Yep.
How's it going?
Good. So I just had a quick question for you. But first, Evan, got to give you props on I Am the Tiger. And Alex, I watched the show you did the other day with the crossover, the killer crossover from three different shows. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Along with you, Evan. I just wanted to know if now this is a crazy hypothetical.
Love
Let's
those.
say Caden Wallace is your left tackle for the year and plays at a Pro Bowl level. Doesn't make the Pro Bowl, but just plays at a pretty high level. Do you go into next year's draft looking to draft maybe your, like a replacement for Judon off the edge, a cornerback? Do you focus more on defense, like trade down? Where do you go from there? Or do you still think that left tackle is that big of a priority, even if you have a guy in-house that's playing at a great level? And I'll take it off here, guys.
Thanks, Patty. That's a great question, Patty. Great question for this show.
Yeah.
So it's a great point. If Caden Wallace, who I want to call it demotion because we don't know, but he was with the second team offense today after being with the first team offense earlier in the week. But I do like what I've seen out of Caden Wallace on the whole,
Yeah.
and think he's on track right now to be a day one starter for the Patriots at left tackle or right tackle, depending on where they settle, but probably left. So if Caden Wallace ends up being, I don't even necessarily think he needs to be Pro Bowl level. Let's just say he's starter level at tackle and
Sure.
as a rookie. Do you feel like we can move off of Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, and move on to a different position?
Let's not forget they have another tackle spot. That's a question too. And Chuks Okorafor is on a 1-year contract. And what's happening on the right side? So
Yeah.
I would argue, and it's a hypothetical, and there's hypotheticals on hypotheticals here. There's layers. If Caden Wallace is good at left tackle, I'd argue he's probably going to be great at right tackle.
Yeah.
And then I would consider drafting Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell and moving Caden Wallace to the right side, back at his natural position, and maybe he takes a jump on the right side, and now you're set. Now you're golden up front. There is also, though, an argument to be made that, okay, you have a solid left tackle, Judon leaves, James Pierce Jr. is the top edge rusher in this class from Tennessee.
There's quite a few of good defensive front guys. Like
There are, but James Pierce Jr. is unless
he's the dude.
Well, okay, so there's a couple ways you go here. James Pierce Jr. we're talking edge, traditional.
Yeah.
You said Judon replacement.
Yeah.
James Pierce Jr. is the guy in his class out of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Do you go there? You could also go, okay, maybe, Uche has a good year, maybe Keon White does. What's happening with Christian Barmore? There's a guy named Deion Walker from Kentucky. Now, Evan, you know how I feel about Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put anybody in the Jordan Davis category because I think he is a freaking unicorn.
Yeah.
But Deion Walker is one of those guys that you look at and you say, how the hell are you moving that way at 330 pounds? Guy's a freak. True pass rush factor as a defensive tackle. If Barmore's medical condition is an issue, or maybe you just want two of those guys because it would be a ton of fun, Deion Walker. You could also go the route of Christian Gonzalez hasn't had a great camp. What if that whole thing ended up being fool's gold? Well, now we're talking about Will Johnson.
Yeah.
So,
or even just having a no-fly zone with both of them out there.
or you could go that route. So, he definitely.
Or can I throw another route at you real quick? I know we were talking defense, but you could also go the Luther Burden route too.
You could. So I'm going to be really. I hope we get to do sort of a college football draft preview-ish thing at some point. Luther Burden, Tech McMillan is going to be a really interesting debate between Patriots fans this year because Luther Burden is probably a slightly better player. It's so tough because Tech McMillan is so young, and I don't want to say anything definitive about him yet, but assuming he continues on the path we think he's going to go on, you get into this debate of building a football team. Tech McMillan's probably the better option because he gives you something you don't have. You already...
He's the pure X.
Right.
Yeah.
Luther Burden, and some of that is Javon Baker. Again, there's so much we don't know.
Right.
Luther Burden's going to be very redundant with a guy like Pop Douglas, who's probably your best receiver. But do you just say, F it, we'll figure out a way to make it work? Like, let's get all the talent in here. So there's a ton of... I think we just mentioned everybody. I mean, I guess the one guy we didn't talk about is Travis Hunter, but you can put him in the corner conversation with Will Johnson.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be a receiver at the NFL level, at least not regularly. Like, it definitely frees up more ways to go. But to go back to the original question, there will be a case to be made, and we have to see how all this other stuff plays out, but just in a bubble. Yeah, Caden Wallace is pretty good at left tackle. Well, what if he's great at right? And you add Will Campbell, and now you're talking about potentially building towards one of the better tackle combos in the NFL in a league where there are not enough tackles to go around.
Yeah, I will always be in the school of thought of reinforcing the offensive line. You know that I will draft as many offensive linemen as they need to until they have 5 guys that can play. Now, I also would say that if this is, let's say it's a good year, not necessarily wins and losses, like we're not getting all caught up in that yet, but let's just say it's a step forward, it's a progress year, it's that foundational year that Gerard Mayo is talking about. That probably means that Alex Van Pelt, you feel pretty good about that system, that coach, reinforcing the offensive line even further and drafting another tackle to build off of this system. You know, in Cleveland, they had Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin for years at both tackle spots, and like had 2 of the best tackles and one of the best offensive lines in football. And that was the bedrock of their offense.
The other thing, I mean, if we want to play this out, maybe Caden Wallace is good at left tackle and you're happy there. Yeah. Again, Chuk's on a 1-year deal. If Caden Wallace is good, like you said, and things go well, maybe they're not going to have that top 10 pick. Maybe they're at like 11, 12, somewhere in that range. Now we start talking about Emory Jones, who's the right tackle at LSU. Yeah. We've talked a lot about Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks because they're the 2 best left tackles in this class, and there's a significant drop-off after that. But there are 2 other first-round tackles, Emory Jones from LSU and Tyler Booker from Alabama, but those guys play on the right side. This show's pretty set in how we feel about moving tackles back and forth.
Yeah.
But maybe look at it and say, all right, Caden Wallace is our left tackle. Let's see if we can upgrade Chuk's Okorafor and add a guy like Emory Jones.
Yeah, it's an exciting proposition to just the Caden Wallace thing in general. And I know I mentioned that he was with the 2s today, and maybe that I had him on my ups, and I kind of took him off because I'm not sure. Maybe they are seeing something that I am not, right? I am not a coach, and I don't have the luxury of watching the practice film back. So maybe the couple of times I've caught him out of the corner of the eye that I thought he's looked good, they actually have watched the film back, and it hasn't been as good. I'm allowing for that. So we'll see what it is tomorrow when they're back in pads and see what it looks like in a couple weeks and all that kind of stuff as well.
So, again, to sum it up.
Yes. We're both tackles, I think, still.
We both saying tackle, but to sum it, we just said there's like 8 or 9 players on the roster that are going to dictate their biggest draft need, and depending on what happens, about half of the first round is in play. Here's what I can tell you definitively, Evan. Let me just get there's one thing I can tell you definitively about what the Patriots' plan should be in the first round as we sit here right now. Carson Beck, not a part of the plan. No. Shadur Sanders, not a part of the plan. No. Anybody else, we can have the conversation. There's guys I prefer to others, but at this point, you can write those 2 off. Anybody else, we're in business.
I'm gonna like Luther Burden.
You're gonna love Luther.
So give me some like a comp. Like I know that those are tough, but like give me because the way you described to me, Luther Burden, the way that I think the guy that immediately comes to mind is Jalen Waddle.
He's a little smaller.
Yeah.
He's listed at 5'11", 208. I don't know about that. He's going to be another one of these guys that's going to be, we'll see at the combine.
Yeah.
I mean, like he's, ideally, if he shows out, I think he's kind of in the mold of this year's Xavier Worthy. Okay. Like he's explosive.
But he's a little bit bigger, yeah.
It's weird.
Like Meteor, he's not going to, Xavier Worthy has a pretty gangly frame.
Yeah, he's not that small. Luther Burden's weird to me. Missouri, I'm interested to see you watch Missouri's offense.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't have watched them a ton this year. Javon Foster was the one guy.
No, I watched
Javon Foster, the tackle.
I was watching line play, which is I'm not looking for.
Right. So, like, yeah, he's listed at 5'11", 208. I take the under on that, not by a ton. He plays much bigger than he is, but some of it is Missouri uses him not exclusively, but he plays a lot as a boundary as an X guy.
Yeah.
And he's probably not going to be that at the NFL.
See, to me, you're saying a little bit bigger Xavier Worthy that is probably going to move more inside of the NFL. Like I feel like you're describing Jalen Waddle.
No, not. How much did Jalen Waddle play at the X at Alabama?
A decent amount.
I guess. Let me put it this way: he's like somewhere between Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. Actually, that's a good.
Okay.
Those Alabama receivers were like, I wouldn't put him squarely.
Two of my favorite receivers.
Right?
In the
No,
league.
like you're gonna like him. Like he's explosive.
Yeah.
He's shifty. He's a good route runner. He's good with the ball in his hands. Like he checks all those boxes. He's just, whether it's Xavier Worthy, whether it's Zay Flowers, whether it's Jalen Waddle, whether it's Devontae Smith, his college usage doesn't come near those guys.
Okay.
His college usage is very unique, which I think there's going to be a lot of debate on him because he's going to be a case of what you see in terms, what you see present versus how you see the potential.
Yeah.
And if Tech McMillan breaks out, if Tech McMillan has the breakout year, that's going to be a definitive guy. 6'5",
But
strong receiver, true X.
So Tech McMillan.
I know you hate. I know you don't.
Ceiling.
Yeah.
As we like to say. Des Bryant.
Des Bryant. You're going to hear a lot of. I know you don't want to do it. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about Mike Evans because he's good with the ball in his hands too.
I mean, I think the world of Des Bryant.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer.
So you said ceiling.
Yeah.
Right, but
he's not dominating like Mike Evans was at A&M.
It's tough because Arizona's not built like that.
He made Johnny Manziel look like a Heisman
He did.
winner.
No, he did. He made Johnny Manziel look like a first-round pick.
Mike Evans should have won the Heisman.
Yes, he should have. No, you're absolutely. But the point is, like, people are going to see a big physical receiver who has if he, and again, he's so young. I think he's a true junior.
Yeah.
He's so young, so it's tough to say. But, like, you're going to see a guy at 6'5" who moves like he's 6'1" in a good way.
Okay.
But can play like he's 6. Those are the flashes that are on tape. And we are such a long way away, especially from a guy that's
I know,
that
we're
young.
in the middle of training camp and we're talking draft. Let's
Sorry,
table this,
but the point
finish
being,
your point.
the point being, if he has the season people think he's going to have,
he's going to be up there.
There's going to be a lot of people saying he's like the path is going to be clearer with him to NFL success than it will be to Luther Burden. I think Luther Burden ultimately has a higher ceiling. As I throw Mike Evans out there, like that's what people are going to say. I think Luther Burden has a higher ceiling.
Yeah.
But you're going to see people saying Tech McMillan is a plug and play day one, wide receiver one, easy answer. Whereas with Luther Burden, there's going to be a little bit more work to get him there.
Okay, fair enough. Has your work from home space turned into an everything space, Alex?
It did. Now we're back at camp, but it did.
Find furniture that fits your life, your budget, and your living space thanks to Bob's Discount Furniture. Shop tons of on-trend, small space, friendly styles like Bob's Do-It-All dining sets, smart storage, and small footprint sectionals that can take you all the way from midday meeting to happy hour in no time. So stop into your local store and multitask stylishly with Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. I was multitasking in my work from home space yesterday, doing some stuff, Patriots stuff, and watching Team USA basketball at the same time. It was fantastic. Then the Red Sox were on right afterwards. It was a great day. Good day off. Let's do 3 up, 3 down for training camp through 7 days of training camp, I should say. And want to start with ups? We'll start with the positive.
Sure.
Yeah, we're a positive show. All right. My number one up for training camp. You ready for this?
Yep.
I kind of did a U and went a little outside the box with this.
Okay.
My number one up for training camp, Scott freaking Peters. Do an applause.
Okay.
Do a standing O for him. Thank you. Strike systems.
Oh, the
technique
strike
work,
system.
All of it.
You're right there at Taylor Kyles.
We're 1 week into training camp, and this offensive line already looks better than it has the last 2 years, simply because they have an offensive line coach that seems like he knows how to do the damn thing, right? And I am thrilled about that. The strike system thing, I got a little, that's not here nor there, maybe a little overrated, but I have seen more competent offensive line play and those 2 padded practices at the beginning of the week than I saw combined probably in the last 2 training camps for the Patriots. There was actual time in the pocket for Jacoby Brissett to like survey the field and make throws down the field. When's the last time we've seen that in a regular basis?
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. They actually, on the day 1 of pads, they broke off not 1, not 2, but 3 successful outside zone runs. On day 1 of pads in a new system where they haven't really been blocking outside zone and all this stuff that I talked about that I was concerned that they weren't going to fit, they've looked pretty good blocking outside zone so far. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's doing a solid job. And just to give some credit to the players as well, I think those guys have marginally improved since the start of camp, and you can see it. Like, Sidy Sow looks like a much better pass protector in year 2 than he did in year 1. And a lot of things that he talked about, I know that we're joking about the strike system, but he's actually talking a lot about independent hands. And when you don't throw both hands at the same time, what happens when you throw like a 2-hand punch? It can work if you hit, but if you don't hit, you end up getting off balance and you're now lunging forward. And that's when guys, can swat and go around you and stuff like that. So what Scott Peters preaches is a lot of independent hand usage, right? Where it's just the left or just the right, and you sit back in your chair and you kind of absorb at that point. Sidy Sow has looked a lot better. Caden Wallace, I think, is making really positive strides.
Good progress.
Layden Robinson has looked decent for a rookie early on in training camp. They seem to have solidified this interior 3 of So, Andrews, Onwenu, which I love. I think that has a chance to be not just a good interior 3, but like kind of a high-level interior 3 if City continues to make progress. You have a plus center, you have a plus guard, and then hopefully you have a starting caliber left guard in Sidy Sow. I'm loving what I'm seeing so far from the line. Thank you. Not watching a practice where it's an absolute train wreck up front is so refreshing. For me, this is like pants off. Like, this is just amazing. So really quickly to end this rant, there's a chance, and it's early, or it's not early, it's middle of training camp. There's a chance that those Cleveland guys just kind of know how to coach the line, right? The system works for the line in terms of the schematics and the big picture concepts. Scott Peters knows how to coach the technique. He's been in this offense. He knows what needs to be done to be successful. I think there's just a chance that they just are good at coaching up linemen.
So we used to talk about this when people would ask, what's going on with the Patriots and wide receivers. And we'd say they're just not a wide receiver team, whether it's talent evaluation, identification, development, and we contrast that with they are a corner team. They can find corners. They can go get an undrafted guy and turn him into a starting caliber player, right?
Yeah.
And there are teams that are different, that just franchises that generally identify different positions differently. I would say Cleveland has, for at least the last, 5-6 years, been an offensive line team.
Yep.
And they would just, any guy they added seemed to work out. They fantastic track record there. And you now have a piece of that here in Scott Peters and some of the other guys that are involved. And you hope that some of that rubs off. And I think maybe that's what you're seeing, that whatever it was, that system in Cleveland, identification, development, whatever, it's probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
It worked. And maybe now you're seeing that system in play here.
So just really quickly, to put a player on it.
Yeah. I was going to say, give me like your most impressive offensive lineman.
Mike Onwenu has been
He's been really good.
Lights out.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I have him at 7-1-1 in one-on-one drills right now.
You had him at 6-0-1 yesterday. They didn't do any one-on-one.
So
today.
I missed the Keon White rep.
Okay.
And I trust Bedard.
We'll get to Keon White.
I trust Bedard. He saw it.
Okay.
With his own eyes, he told me.
I was just going to say, I didn't know if I missed them doing like non-padded offensive line one-on-ones.
Yeah, no. I trust him. I must have missed it. I don't know why. Sometimes you don't see
it. It happens. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So, and they were split into 2 groups while this was going on. So, officially, I'm going with 7-1-1. He's won his first 6. I think he won his first 6, and then I had him down for a tie.
Yeah.
Just a stalemate. I kind of give tie.
Right.
When you got walk.
I feel like tie should go to the offense though.
Yeah, but like if you get walk back a little bit into the quarterback and then anchor, like I still kind of tend to give that as a tie. And then I guess Keon White did beat him and I didn't see it. So 7-1-1, and in those wins, he's just like a man amongst boys. Like guys just can't get around him. He's just been stellar. So I would say Mike Onwenu would be the best so far. But the most promising is definitely the rookies. Like,
has to be.
Yeah, Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson looking like they belong this early in camp. Go get them, Scotty. Good job.
All right. So I figured you'd have the offensive line, so I kind of tried to work mine around yours. Maybe this is an overlap.
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett's
It's
been
fair.
good. We kind of already talked about it, so we don't need to spend
Yeah.
a lot of time. But Jacoby Brissett's been good.
Yeah.
It's been really good.
It's fair enough. I'm not surprised about what we're seeing from Jacoby Brissett. Like I said, I think a lot of people looked at the record in Cleveland in 2022, and whether you're into QB wins or you're not into QB wins, they have some merit of if this guy's good or not.
Right.
And I think a lot of people looked at the QB wins for Jacoby Brissett, not just in Cleveland, but also just throughout his career as a starter. He's made 48 starts. His record's not great. And a lot of people he stinks, right? He's awful. But if you actually look at the stats, look at the film, like if you take his 11 starts in Cleveland and stretch him out to 17 games, he would have thrown for like 4,000 yards and like 25 touchdowns in Cleveland in 2022. So
Okay, hang on. So we're doing that because when I tried to do this with Kendrick Bourne a year ago, I got yelled at by you.
that's probably fair.
All right, I'm just.
But
I don't
but
mind
now-
you doing it, but
but now it supports my argument.
now it supports your argument,
Yeah,
not mine.
yeah.
Okay, understood.
But he's not terrible.
Yeah.
Your guy Felger likes to say that he's terrible.
Who, Brissett?
Yes.
Felger's like all geeked up on Jacoby Brissett right now.
No, he
is. No, I was just
he
on with
can't-
them.
No,
I was
he
just
cannot
on with them.
Flip-flop like that. I will not allow for this. I will
No,
not stand for this.
He's because his whole thing is he wants them to win as many games this year as possible.
He was the one that wanted them to get Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I heard him.
Now his thing now, like, all right, if Jacoby Brissett can win you games, great. I get all right. So I get what you're saying. He didn't think Jacoby Brissett could win them games.
He said as early as like earlier this week when I was driving home and I was listening to them, and I do listen, so I'm not trying to like pick on them, but he said earlier this week that his top tier was the Kirk Cousins and stuff. Like he said that he wanted to be the Atlanta Falcons. He would have signed Kirk Cousins and drafted Drake May still, and then sat Drake May for a couple years behind Kirk.
Well,
Cousins.
so I think what he likes now is, again, I was just on with them.
Yeah.
This all like not the pressure's off Drake May. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but basically like Jacoby Brissett's going to give you a football season.
Yes.
And maybe they don't make the playoffs, but he likes the idea of Jacoby Brissett holds down the fort as long as he needs to hold down the fort because he's not as into Drake May. He just doesn't like rookie quarterbacks. It's not something he believes in.
Yeah.
He fully believes, and he's a Packers fan, shocker. If he needs to sit a year or 2 years,
17 years later.
right,
yeah.
he's all in on that model.
Right.
So I think the idea that Jacoby Brissett can give you something for a year and the team can still be competitive. Maybe they don't make the playoffs, but the team can still be competitive.
He's in.
Right, he's in on that. So he's come around on Jacoby Brissett.
Well, I actually think the way you laid it out is exactly how I feel right now about
Right.
Jacoby Brissett. I do not think that if they have to play Jacoby Brissett, that they are going to be a bore to watch on offense.
Right.
Do I think that they're going to win a bunch of games? Probably not. But they aren't going to be like they were last year.
It's
where
not
a
going to be.
train wreck.
You're not going to come away from it and be like, what the hell did I just watch? Like,
Yeah.
they're not going to reinvent ways to struggle offensively,
They're
which
not
is what
going
they did
to.
at times.
They're not
last
going to
year.
look like a middle school offense.
It's going to look representative.
Yes.
It's going to look. They're not going to set. They're not coming for the 07 Patriots records.
Right.
But you're going to be able to watch it. And I think sneaky big thing about Jacoby Brissett. I actually didn't put either of these guys in my ups because I was trying to put it together. But representative.
Yeah.
He's given Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, and I'll even throw Demario Douglas in here, but really the rookies, because Douglas has been limited, those guys have had a chance to really develop and really make plays while Drake May goes through his growing pains.
Yeah.
And they're not, I think this has been part of the issue with the wide receiver development here post-Brady. You're getting representative quarterback play, and it's allowing those guys to do what they need to do without being maybe handcuffed by developmental play at the quarterback position. And the two biggest winners, I would say, of Jacoby Brissett's kind of surprise start to camp are Baker and Polk because they were able to rep with the ones and they're able to get quality reps.
So speaking of them,
Yeah. All right, you had them. Good. My next two are on defense. So,
I had one on defense too.
all right.
Um,
It's probably the same guy.
I don't think it is actually.
All right.
I had Javon Baker and Jalen Polk together.
Yeah, that's fair. Rookie receivers. That's
I
fair.
think both rookie receivers
Again, that's how I do it.
have been exactly in the last couple of days, and the reason why I'm like kind of dancing around is because I don't think Javon Baker's made as many plays the last couple days.
He got off to a slower start, too, and I think some of that was the injury he had in the spring.
But all of this stuff that we're seeing from those two guys are exactly as advertised of what I thought they would be in the draft. Javon Baker is going to be your splash play guy. It's not going to be consistent, but whether it's
Gabe Davis.
Yeah, that was my comp. There's a little bit more above the rim than Gabe Davis, I think, that I didn't notice as much as
absolutely.
Gabe Davis is I still feel like is just kind of run under it speed guy.
But I think when you look at what you're projecting for production, Javon Baker's like a 3-catch, 80 yards, 1 touchdown guy, and there'll be like 4 or 5 games where he maybe goes for like $150 ideally, and like 4 or 5 games where he gets blanked.
Yes,
right.
Couldn't agree more, and that's exactly how they practice. Right. Javon Baker is going to have like the play that he made earlier this week. He's going to have a catch like that's going to make your jaw drop, and you're going to say, "Holy crap, this guy's so talented!" But the guy that's really going to be the engine of the offense is going to be Jalen Polk, and Jalen Polk to me has me really excited because the one thing that I wanted to see out of Jalen Polk was he one of these craftsmen that the 40 time just isn't going to matter. Like we can just throw the 40 time out because he's smooth, he's fluid, he's great at the top of the route, he's got great hands, physical, and I'm getting those types of vibes from him so far. It goes against a lot of my beliefs at the wide receiver position because I'm a separation guy. Yeah. Like everything to me is separation. But I look at Jalen Polk as a guy that truly could catch a high volume of targets in this offense and could play on all situations because he's got the size to be able to block and throw his weight around a little bit too in the run game. So I don't think he necessarily needs to come off the field.
I think it's important because I've seen people say, why are you saying Jalen Polk has had this great camp when he hasn't had any big plays? And he had the one early on. That's it.
Yeah, and he had the one in sevens the other day.
Right. So, 11s is what really counts. And I think I texted you about this. You got to look at them in this dynamic. Javon Baker is your big play threat.
Yep.
He's not going to be a consistent player, but he is the guy you're going over the top. Jalen Polk is the exact opposite. Jalen Polk is chain mover.
Yeah.
Jalen Polk is here to go 8 to 12 yards from the line of scrimmage, find an opening in the defense, sit down, catch the football, move the chains.
Yeah.
And that it's not going to be flashy, and he might not. Remember, because again, the comp before the draft with Jacoby Myers, it's the same role.
He is a spitting image of Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers went 3 years before his first NFL touchdown, something like that. Like, I would not be surprised if Jalen Polk is similar, but he is going to be the guy. Third and got to have it. He is going to find a spot just past the sticks, get open, catch the ball, fall down like that. And it's an important role. Now it's diminished, and part of the reason the offense didn't pop with Jacoby Myers here is that role gets a lot sexier when you have somebody out there opposite who's a threat to make the big play. And Jacoby Myers never really played with that guy. He is now in Vegas with Devontae Adams, but you hope either Baker's that guy or you add that guy next year or whatever. We'll get to one other guy that maybe gives them a stopgap there, but I'm not going to go that far yet. But like when you look at Polk in that context, he's had a great camp. If you're expecting him to be, 7-8 touchdown guy, a 15 yards per reception guy, like he's not going to be that, but that's not who he is. That's not what he was drafted to be.
So
he's here to move the chains.
My question with Jalen Polk, my one question, because I've been impressed. He runs great routes. He gets open enough. He's not a big time separator, but he gets open enough.
Right.
And he's got the hands are as advertised, really good hands, and just really incredibly fluid and smooth at the top of the route. He ran a route on Marcellus Dial today on the goal line, and it's so silky. Yeah. And there's no wasted movement, and he has nice burst off the line and into the route. Really just Jacoby Myers, like through and through. It looks so much. Now, my question with him is, okay, so his average target depth, stay with the nerds with me for a second.
I'll give you a dot. That is a tangible number.
His average target depth is going to be about 9 or 10 yards.
Something like that, yep.
So can he turn 9 and 10 yard A-dots into 13, 14 yards per catch? Or is he going to be 9 and 10 A-dots and 10 yards per catch? Because that's going to be the difference between him being 70 for 700 and 70 for 1,000.
So what I think is going to help him, and so this year I think he's more that 10, 9 10 yards per catch guy.
Yeah.
But ideally, and again, we're putting on our ideal hats here.
Yes.
If Drake May pans out,
Yeah.
teams are going to have to play a ton of zone against Drake May because you can't have defenders turning their eyes away from him when he's a threat to run.
Sure.
When Polk sees zone, he's able to find space where he can catch the ball 9 yards downfield, but has room to run and set himself up with room to run. If Drake May can get to the level where teams are forced into zone against the Patriots, or at least like defenders keeping their eyes on the quarterback,
Yeah.
it's going to unlock another level for Jalen Polk.
Yeah, he's been
If
good.
that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that right.
Yeah,
but
he's been good, and I think that there's a lot of reasons to be excited. And I just, for the record, I did not think that N'Keal Harry and Tyquan Thornton looked like this in their rookie camps. I think they both had flashes. Like maybe if you wanted to put them more in the Baker school, I think they both had flashes as rookies. Before their injuries, obviously.
Well, I'll say that too, and that's where we need to be careful here. I've always said, I think, because players don't just like suck. Players don't forget how to play football. There's usually a reason behind why players' careers get derailed. Harry and Thornton both got hurt in their first camp, and they lost development time. And especially in the system the Patriots were using at the time, there was just significant catch-up that they didn't have time to do. So Polk stays healthy, but I think Harry was a big guy. I don't know what that was. Just he hurt himself and they put him back in. That was a whole other thing. Thornton was always a threat to get hurt.
Yeah.
Polk's built more to maintain at the NFL level.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, who else you got?
What was your second? Oh no, your second was the rookie receivers.
Yes.
Marcus Jones.
He's on my list.
I think Marcus. So there's two guys I think you could argue have been the best, most consistent defensive players in this camp.
Yeah.
Marcus Jones is one of them. He has been just excellent in coverage. He's constantly on the receiver. He's done it from different spots. He's done it from the slot. He's done it from the boundary. He's done it playing safety a little bit. He's had a pass breakup, like a physical pass breakup against Jalen Polk, who's much bigger than him. He had a physical pass breakup against Juju Smith-Schuster today, who is bigger than him. We can talk about where Juju's at, but he is strong, like upper body. Juju is strong, and Jones punched the ball out. Big development if he's still going to give you that inside-outside versatility.
Yeah, he's starting nickel now, and I don't think it's close. I think...
Well, is he their starting nickel, or is he a guy that they're going to rep on the boundary?
No, I think he's starting nickel.
Okay. But he can rep on the boundary if they need him to.
Yeah, I think he probably could, but Gonzo, John Jones, Marcus Jones is your top three right now, and to me, it's going to be hard for somebody to make a push like an Alex Austin or an Isaiah Baldwin.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if there's injury or whatever, and he gives you that at least depth there.
Where John Jones and Marcus Jones physically actually line up might morph week to week, game to game, drive to drive, whatever. But those three guys are pretty entrenched, I would say, right now, in where they're going to play in terms of playing time. Like those are going to be the top three guys. The other thing, and we haven't seen a ton of it, and we haven't seen it truly live yet, he is going to be a monster on kickoff returns, and
I still wonder if they're going to put him back there on kickoff return.
Why wouldn't they?
Injury. If he's playing this well as a corner, they have other kick return options.
That's a bummer, though, because this is
maybe he becomes a guy where it's like he's not going to return every kickoff, but when you get to a big point
when you
in the
need
game,
it, I mean, he's got to be the primary punt returner.
And that's the other thing. He's going to be the primary punt returner, and it's just I feel like a big difference between the old and there's no inside information here. It's just hearing the way people talk.
Yeah.
I feel like the current coaching staff maybe thinks he was overworked in the past between
offense,
multiple positions. Well, it was multiple positions on defense.
Yeah.
Kick returns, punt returns, and offense. And if they just let's have him be great at three things rather than have him be just above average at five things. I wonder if there's kind of, and we'll see what happens with guys like Jalen Reagor and guys like Jaheim Bell and things like that. But I do wonder if there's an element of we have other guys that can return kicks. It doesn't need to be on his plate. Let's not put it on his plate.
So I think it's fair to say that what you said about if it's the fourth quarter, you're down a touchdown and you need a field flipping return. Maybe you have Marcus Jones back there for that, but maybe he's not back there every single time. But I also feel like we might get into the season and it might be touchback city anyways.
That too. I think teams are going to be petrified. So I didn't realize, seeing it in person, I didn't realize how far in front of the returner
Yeah.
the setup lines are, because that part's different than the old XFL.
Yeah.
There's so much room to set things up. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
I think teams are going to be scared of this.
That's why I feel like Marcus Jones would just be dynamite.
I also wonder,
because there's so much space.
I also wonder, because Gerard Mayo kind of let it slip the other day that the league is still tinkering with and finalizing the rules. The touchback being at the 30 is not going to be enough.
It might have to go up to the 35.
40.
40.
I wonder if the league steps in, because they want this to be a play.
Yeah.
They want a kickoff. They want an exciting play.
They're calling it the dynamic kickoff.
And look,
it's a league-wide initiative to hype up this thing.
Okay,
like,
and
this is important to the league.
Well, let me say this as we're on a sort of league airwaves here. Like, when it's played out, it is a very exciting play.
Yeah.
I just don't think the disincentive is there.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Right? Like, I think there's going to be a lot of teams that kind of start working on this thing and think there's so much opportunity. They're going to see how potentially exciting it is for the return team and say, this isn't worth it. We'll give up the extra 5 yards and start at the 30. And I wonder if the team sees that in the preseason, because I think they're doing this by the seat of their pants. They won't change it during the regular season. I wonder if they see it during the preseason and say, nope, touchbacks now the 40.
Yeah.
Figure that out. And if not this year, I think next year for sure. If teams are using this or just kicking touchbacks, I think next year we see the touchback line moving to the 35 or the 40 and really incentivizing teams to kick this off and have a play.
So I had offensive line, the rookie receivers, and Marcus Jones. You have one more?
Yeah. Keon White.
Yeah. So go ahead.
He's been excellent on the edge. Like, he was hyped up in the spring. Gerard Mayo said he's been improved, and talk about the year 2 jump, and especially against the run. I mean, he's been a monster. He's been a problem. And he's been getting in the backfield regularly, and this is a guy they really need to take that next jump, and early indications are he's doing it. Like, he of all the young players, all the players on rookie contracts, call it the last, 22, 23, or it'd be 20, there's nobody left from 21. There's a couple, but call it like the 21, 22, 23 draft classes, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's taken as big of a jump as Keon White. I don't think anybody's close to taking as big of a jump as Keon White looks like he's taking.
So I think he's made some plays against the run.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see the breakout camp that some of the other guys down here have seen. And I'm not saying that they're wrong or you're wrong.
Yeah.
I just haven't necessarily seen it that way 100%. But the biggest reason why to me that I haven't is because I still don't necessarily see like the twitched up one-on-one pass rusher. If he's schemed into the pass rush, like if they're running stunts and picks and stuff like that for him, and he just has a straight line to the quarterback and he can just kind of, be a linear athlete in that respect, or if he wants to just use straight power, I think those things are there. He's still, to me, a developing player in terms of his pass rush. Now, maybe Covington and Joe Kim and the new defensive line coach I'm liking on, maybe they get him there eventually. I'm hopeful, because he's definitely a wrecking ball. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, he's a wrecking ball against the run, and he's a splash player in that respect. But I when you watch them and do one-on-ones and stuff like that too, he still just looks a little bit stiff to me.
So I don't think he's ever going to be that twitched up, quick pass rusher.
Yeah.
He's going to be, and we saw it last year. Like, he's athletic.
Yeah.
He's a bull rusher. I think his best way to win.
He needs a counter.
He needs a counter, but I think his best way to win, his initial punch is so strong.
Yeah.
Get the lineman off balance, and then when that guy's off balance, he can run around him. He does need a counter to that, but we talked about this last year. That initial punch from him is, I mean, it can knock a guy out not knock out, but like you can essentially you can stun a lineman for a play. And I remember him doing against the Eagles last year, where he would hit that punch, the lineman would get off balance, he'd get in the backfield, Jalen Hurts ran out, and this happened like 3 or 4 times. Yeah. And Keon White's running step for step with him as he runs out and never let him get the edge. Like,
he's definitely an athletic at a very good linear explosive athlete.
He's powerful and he's athletic. He's just not quick,
and he's not overly bendy. And so normally, like, guys that can really rack up sacks and pressures, like a Judon, Uche, when he's rolling, those guys obviously have great first steps, but they're also very bendy.
So I'm trying to think here, who's a pass rusher that wins like mainly just by being stronger and more physically dominant? on the edge.
I would say
there's guys that do it in the middle.
The closest thing I would say is probably like Rashawn Gary in Green Bay. Like,
Yeah, but doesn't he play on the interior?
No, he's pure edge
Oh,
guy.
I'm thinking of. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, he's probably the closest thing that I can think of. That's not a super veteran player or a retired player or anything like
Well,
that.
no, give me a retired player. Give me some names.
Okay, so I would say that Rashawn Gary is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I mentioned him earlier in the show just with the Judon stuff. Like I think Zadarius Smith is a guy that wins with.
That's a good one. Yeah.
As like a pure power type of guy. Those guys always worry me because typically they can disrupt and they can knock a lineman off their rails, and they're good against the run because they're sturdy. But in terms of if we're talking about Keon White replacing Matthew Judon,
Yeah.
they need that player to be a finisher.
So, right, if he's going to replace Judon, you need more than that. But if he's going to be your secondary,
Yeah, I'm not low
On
on
the strong
I'm not
side.
like
No,
trying
yeah.
to. I just personally, I think for him to go from what he was last year, or really just to go from like, there's a difference between being disruptive and being productive.
ooh, this is a good one in the chat. Justin Tuck.
Possibly, we were a little young for Justin Tuck.
He was just mean. He was just mean
Yeah.
and physical. He just threw guys aside. There wasn't. It wasn't really dressed up. There wasn't a ton of like,
Yeah.
oh, look at the footwork. Oh, look at the hands. It was just, wow, he just kind of tossed that guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you hope Keon White becomes.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
But that's for him to hit that like elite level. Like for what he is right now, he's still projecting to be a good,
Yeah.
useful, what's the word I'm looking for?
Edge rusher.
No, but like disruptive player.
Yes, I think there's a very good chance that he ends up being a guy that has a lot of hurries and a lot of like pressure, but I don't know about the sacks element of it yet. And the sack element comes through finishers, right? Like a rip move or some sort of finisher that allows you to actually get to the quarterback and make contact with the quarterback. He's getting there. They need to give him a counter. Like he could be a long arm bull rush type of guy and probably just do that all the time,
right,
and be disruptive. But if he had some sort of a counter, now the counter that I think he'll probably get to is probably like an inside counter, like whether it's a crossover or a arm over swim move type of inside move.
Who had that move? I think this was a Von Miller thing where like he faked the bull rush.
Yeah.
Just kind of got his arms out and the lineman like anticipated it and then just he stopped right before he hit him and the line was all off balance and then he just kind of who was that?
So Von Miller patented the ghost rush, which is like you go speed to power and then instead of actually making contact, so the lineman braces and instead of actually making contact, you just dip underneath.
Right. Okay, that's what I'm thinking of because Josh Uche was working on that at one point, wasn't
so
he?
that's called a ghost rush, and Von Miller is usually the guy that people give credit to for popularizing.
I thought it was Von Miller. I mean, he obviously has much more in his bag. His bag, he can rush any which way. But
yeah, okay. Let's do downs.
Yeah,
we're all done with ups, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Number one down.
You know what? Actually, I have an honorable mention up because I'm too afraid to put him on my list. But he's had a good camp.
I know. I think I know where you're going with
Tyquan
this.
Thornton.
Yeah. I can't do it to myself.
And I don't want to do it, but I also don't want to be unfair. The guy's been good, and let's give him credit.
Yeah.
He's been good, and he's been good when the pads are on. And the reason I'm hesitant to do it is because he'll come out tomorrow and land weird and hurt himself. But like,
I'm more hesitant to do it. Like that's definitely in play, and
okay,
you're right.
Let's put this qualifier on it. Neither one of us are projecting anything forward.
Yeah.
He could still very well not make the team.
But objectively, he's had a good camp.
Through 7 days.
Fair enough.
And this is with Kendrick Bourne and Pop Douglas essentially not practicing.
Yes.
Tyquan Thornton's been their best veteran wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take. Like I said in the spring.
Well, there's a lot of qualifiers on that, but
the biggest qualifier to me is just like, can you actually do it in an NFL regular
right?
season
So
game?
that's the thing.
It's one thing to do it out here. At training camp.
I was just on Felger. I said, don't go draft him in fantasy. To which
Right.
Felger said, I didn't have to worry about him doing that.
Yeah,
but he objectively, I mean, he's beaten Christian Gonzalez in one-on-ones and team.
Yeah.
He's getting open. He's catching the ball. Drops haven't really been an issue for him. I don't remember him having any drops.
No.
He's making contested catches. Like, he's doing all the things we've kind of wanted him to do.
Now you're doing Taekwon.
No, but I'm saying
now you're doing how the tables have turned.
No,
now you're
but I'm not.
doing Taekwon.
But I'm not, because
You are.
the difference is I'm putting all of this in the past tense.
You're going to talk me into this again.
I am putting all of this in the past tense, and here's the difference: 2 years of game action significantly outweigh 7 training camp practices.
No doubt.
And I still know the guy he's been in games. And that's why he's on here, because he hasn't looked like that in these practices. He's got to do it in a preseason game, and he's got to get to the season healthy.
I almost
because
feel
he
like
started his first 2 years on IR, but he's actually stacked.
Does he have to do it in the preseason? Like,
yes.
Does he have to play?
Yes.
I almost wouldn't play him.
No, he has to play because
Why? He's played in plenty of regular season games. He just does nothing.
You need to prove this isn't fool's gold.
So I think the two things
you need to see this isn't fool's gold.
I hear you. I think the two things I'll give you Taekwon.
Yeah.
Give to Taekwon. Number one, I said back in the spring, and you made fun of me for doing Taekwon again. There's a very, very distinct role for him in this offense that is needed, and that's that speed X. So they're going to run a ton of 2-man route concepts. Right. And if you don't have somebody that can take the top off the defense and make the safety stay deep, then the whole thing goes to crap. Like, you need somebody that can run down the field. It's that simple. It might come to the point where it's just wind sprints 75% of the time, but if you get one-on-one coverage deep and you're on that deep over, that deep post route or a clear out on a vertical, like, you have to be able to win one-on-one. Yeah. And you have to be, or take the safety with you. And there's nobody else on this team right now that does that, like, at Taekwon's
So
level.
here's the thing. As I say all this, I still don't know if I were to do a roster projection day that I have Taekwon on the team.
Yeah.
Because Javon Baker's also looked really good, and he's going to do that differently, but he could do that.
Yeah, so the second thing I'd give Taekwon is that I do feel like the 7 or 8 pounds of muscle that he's put on, I tangibly do see some of it. Like, I feel like he's more physical. And I don't mean that he's, like, bodying people and stuff like that. I just mean he's, like, more sturdy. Like, he doesn't look, like, so frail out there. And, like, people are just, pushing him around and bodying him everywhere. It feels like he's more, he's denser.
Yeah, I need to see more because, again, the 2 years outweigh 7 practices. Yeah. But I do think you should give credit where credit's due. He's been one of their better players this summer.
Fair enough. Let's get to the downs.
All right.
Speaking of receivers.
Yeah.
The number one down, I think, for everybody, if you asked every beat writer that's been here every single day like you and I, is Juju Smith-Schuster.
It's rough, man.
It's rough to watch.
It's rough.
And if he wasn't one of these guys that made a boatload of money in his NFL career and is a made man with a ring, I would genuinely feel bad watching him. Like, it looks painful at times watching him go through these practices.
There's an argument to be made. Do I have on my roster? Yeah, I do. There's an argument to be made that he's been there. I just said, like, Taekwon's been their best, and that comes with some qualifiers, but their best veteran receiver. Has Juju been their worst? Now, look, Jaquay Jackson, right, Kawan Baker, these guys aren't getting a ton of reps.
Yeah.
David Wallace. But there have been... Jaquay Jackson had a diving catch the second day camp.
Yeah, Jaquay Jackson's had at least a couple catches.
Kawan Baker had a touchdown today. Like, he gets open occasionally. Even David Wallace had one where it was a deep ball from Joe Milton that he caught up to. Like, it was a little overthrown, and he got his wheels going. He got up to it. Now, those guys don't rep a ton. So I'm not sitting here saying, like, they've definitively been better than Juju Smith-Schuster. But I feel like Juju, he did catch the slant from Joe Milton yesterday, so I shouldn't say he's had nothing.
That was the one time where I was like, okay.
But the difference
is an NFL route.
There's not a ton of times you look at those other guys and say, wow, it's that bad. Maybe that's versus expectations, but it's drops. It's lack of separation. Like, every time I notice Juju, it's him. It's something going wrong.
He doesn't have it left. He doesn't have it anymore. It's just gone. And that's what happens, unfortunately. Like, I'm not trying to pile on, but that's just unfortunately what happens with guys is that it just goes and it just doesn't come back.
Right.
And that's where they're at with Juju. Now we had this conversation before the show started off the air. Now it's just about what's your exit strategy here? He's probably not going to have any trade value. He shouldn't make the team. So what's the exit strategy?
I think you got to eat the money. You got to eat the money, and that $9 million is best spent by opening up opportunities for Jalen Polk and Javon Baker and Pop Douglas. Now, I don't know, do they keep him and just not play him?
I just feel like, and we had this conversation earlier off the air, I just feel like he's a household name, and a name that I'm sure a lot of the younger receivers in that room respect a ton because of his career and his accolades. It's hard to keep that kind of guy around and A, have him be a good Samaritan about it, but B, just like have it be the dynamic in the room be normal. It's not all that different to me than Cam Newton and Mac Jones. Mac Jones's rookie year. Like, it's going to be an elephant in the room for the entire season that this guy that's making the most money, by the way, in the room, that has a Super Bowl ring, that made Pro Bowls, like all these accolades, is the odd man out that's never playing. Like, it just doesn't feel right to me to keep him around for those reasons. And yeah, that's one that you got to go to Mr. Kraft and you got to tell him that we got to cut our losses.
That's when I think the book's closed there.
Yeah.
And I just think, he said yesterday he kind of tweaked his knee running off to the side. Like,
he said he tripped on a rock.
Yeah.
You can say
I was okay.
You can
yeah,
say
exactly.
He said he tripped on a rock, which I still don't really understand.
I just think, like, physically, sometimes you have those injuries and they stay, and that's it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be laughing, but just the way he said that was pretty funny yesterday. All right. So do we both have Juju?
Yeah.
All right. Who's in your next one?
My next one is Antonio Mafi.
Yeah, it's been rough.
So he's trying to make the move to center.
Yeah.
And it's just been a lot of erratic snaps. Some false starts, which I don't know if they're entirely on him, but that's usually at least a little on the center.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Nick Leverett kind of struggled the first day or two at center. He's been solid since, and he's gotten a ton of opportunities with David Andrews missing practice. So I think that was a sneaky battle that maybe we didn't realize was a battle. Now, Jake Andrews also on PUP, so does he come back and does he mix in there? But, like, I feel pretty good about Nick Leverett as the backup center right now.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about Nick Leverett as, like, the backup interior.
Yeah, and he'll play some guard too, but it's
like Layden Robinson's going to make the roster. But if you had to put a guy in on game day, somebody gets hurt, and you have to put somebody in immediately, whether it's at guard or center, I think Nick Leverett could hold his own at either spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, he was a good find. He was a good signing. Mafi right now, I think they moved him to center because I wonder if they wondered about his ability at guard, and he's not a center. Like, that's been pretty clear.
Yeah, he doesn't really necessarily like, the further you go out, the more athletic you need to be, typically, and his lack of foot speed and stuff like that at guard was getting exposed. So I can understand why they probably thought if he's going to make the team, it's going to be at center. A lot of those snaps that he's been having, we talked earlier about the West Coast offense and timing and rhythm and how important those things are. When Drake May is taking snaps off his shoelaces and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff gets ruined. And I know people are Lazar making excuses for Drake May. I'm just saying, like, that's the context.
No, that's been part of it, and that's part of the context of Drake May's struggles. Like, the unit around him hasn't been great.
The snaps have been rough at times. Okay, so you have Mafi. Marte Mapu is on my downs.
Can't make the club from the tub. I'm bummed. We did a show last week, right? This was last week that we talked about Marte Mapu and a potential role for him. I got myself a little bit excited about what that could be. We mentioned earlier in the show Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, Christian Gonzalez. That seems to be your top three corners right now. John Jones, and especially Marcus Jones, undersized guys, smaller guys. It would be great to be able to get in to, like, a 3-nickel safety defense or a 3-safety dime or something like that, where you could put somebody in the slot that's got some size to him. That is on the roster right now. The guy that could do that is Marte Mapu, unless you put Jalen Hawkins in and move Peppers and Duggar around and things like that. That was his projected role, and I thought that was a legitimate role that he could have on this team that could make an impact, and he could actually be a useful player. He came in hurt. Yep.
He's hurt again. At some point, you have to be available to make the football team. It's getting dicey. And the one thing that I would say for him that he has the feather in his cap right now is that most of the time teams don't move on from top 100 picks in year two. Like, they usually give them two solid years to make a run at it, to carve out a role on the team.
Right.
So he might just make it or maybe he's an IR guy and he's stashed for a year and gets healthy and all that kind of stuff. But you said it best. You can't make the club from the tub. It's that simple. All right, who else you got?
This one kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to start having this conversation.
Uh-oh.
Alex Austin.
Yeah.
He had that great spring, and we got all excited. And
had a decent back end of the season last year.
Yeah. And, I'm not writing him off as, I'd still probably have him on a roster projection if I made it today. But
yeah,
he just didn't quite – he's not – he was really dominant this spring.
Yeah.
And he's been fine. He's had his moments. He's also gotten beat a few times. He's kind of mixed in. He looks like a backup rotational corner. We thought maybe they found another guy.
Yeah.
And you haven't seen that from him this summer. So, I don't know. Maybe it's a little harsh putting him on the downs. It was more just something I wanted to bring up, and it seemed like a good time to do it. He's not – we got a little too ahead of ourselves with him this spring.
Yeah, that's more than fair. I think both Marco Wilson and Isaiah Bolden have flashed a little bit more for me.
Marcellus Dial got some more time today, too.
Yeah,
he's been working a little more.
They're clearly kind of putting him on notice maybe
that
a little
thing's
bit.
open again.
Just throw it back out there. Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, so I'm very much back on that.
Yeah,
that thing.
if they get to the end of the summer and it's not much better for Austin and they don't really feel great about the rookies or the young guys, Bolden, Dial, those players, that's when Elliot Wolf picks up the phone and calls an old friend. I feel like.
Can I give you one more player that's been good? And I kind of have a weird take about this.
Yeah,
I feel like I don't know how much, they probably don't read our stuff a ton or at all, but
they read mine.
There used to be around here. There are certain players that have a good camp that we just don't talk about them having a good camp because that's the expectation.
Yeah.
That used to be like we would never come in here back in the day and say, who's having a really good camp? Julian Edelman.
Yeah, who's on the ups? Rob Gronkowski.
Right, we would never do that. And I don't know. So those are the kind of guys you talk about as core pieces where how many of those guys are here right now? I was just thinking about it today. Jawan Bentley's been really good in camp. He's been everywhere against the run. The defense, they had their first miscommunication today, but besides that, everything's been locked in, and that's him in the middle of it. And I'm thinking Jawan Bentley's kind of hit that level, I think, where he's a guy now that he's having a good camp, really not worth bringing up. And I don't mean that as any disrespect to Jawan Bentley, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up. But it's if I were to sit here and say, who's having a good camp, Jawan Bentley, you'd kind of be like, yeah, he's a good player. What's your point, right?
Yeah,
so
that's what I just said.
Exactly.
Good
So
player.
it's I don't know how many of those guys do as you try to build back up because there used to be a lot of those guys here, right? We would never sit here and say Stephon Gilmore is having a great training camp.
Yeah.
We might bring up good individual plays he made, but we would never be like, yeah, Gilmore trending it. No, he's good.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of those guys do they have here right now? Bentley definitely feels like one of them. Thought Christian Gonzalez would be. He hasn't been.
Being very harsh on Christian Gonzalez.
Felger mascot in my head. They asked me about him. Oh, Ramondre has had a really good camp. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say Ramondre and Hunter Henry. I would throw those guys in there. Maybe you can think of a few more. But some of them, Judon, would be that guy. But
I would say probably the safeties, Duggar and Peppers.
That's true, yeah.
They're kind of anointed at this point in my mind. All right, last down for me. I'm just sticking to the theme because, frankly, I don't think that this has been outside of Juju, who I guess we didn't really have great expectations for anyway. I don't feel like anybody that I had all these high expectations for has been a true down. I understand some people probably are put Drake May on the downs, but he's a rookie quarterback in his first couple practices, right? I'm just not ready to go there yet. So I'll stick to the theme of the Jaheim Bell just not being healthy as a 7th round pick. That's tough. It's another one of those guys that if you're going to have any chance to make the team, you're going to have to play, and you're going to have to play well, and you're going to have to flash and all that kind of stuff. And you can't be hurt as a 7th round pick and make an NFL roster. That's not easy to do. And on the flip side, Mitchell Wilcox has been involved a little bit. I think LaMichael Petway makes plays. I don't know. It's a tight end 3, right? We're not talking about him jumping Hunter Henry on the depth chart or anything like that. But could they get Wilcox, Petway, those guys? Maybe they only carry 2 tight ends and they just lean on the practice squad for some of these guys too. Probably what Bill would do, honestly. You keep Henry Hooper and then just stash whoever you can stash as game day, the Matt Sokol of the world. I just, you can't make the club from the tub is really the short way of saying all this with both him and
I didn't necessarily want to put like the injured guy. I'm with you on that. I didn't really want to put the injured guys on there just because they're dealing. You can't make the club from the tub, but
yeah,
you also, I mean, it's football. Guys get hurt, you deal with stuff. But yeah, Mafi, Bell, Jake Andrews, I'd put on there. Like again, we're talking about Nick Leverett's kind of emerging, and does he take that job? There's one other guy. Who am I thinking of? Who's on PUP or hurt or whatever?
Oh well, Taki's been on PUP.
Yeah, well that should have been Mapu's chance to shine.
Yeah.
You know who's made the most of that? Brendan Schooler.
No.
What do you mean no? Brendan Schooler's played a ton of defense in this camp, and he hasn't been bad. I'm not saying he's going to
special teams guy, and he should make the roster. Like I'm not saying he should.
He's going to play some defense this year.
Oh God.
Not a lot.
I don't think that's a good.
Gerard Mayo said it. They're getting him ready to play defense.
They have to get him ready because I think Mayo looks at it and says, well, first of all, they might go light at safety, right? Because they just paid both those guys.
Well,
I mean, play a ton.
We'll see what happens with Hawkins, but on that back end, like he's a free safety.
Okay, who's your last down?
No, Smith, Schuster, Mafi, Austin.
Oh, right, you had 3.
Yeah.
So we both got 3.
Yeah.
Who
was your third?
Bell. Gene Bell.
Right.
Do you want to talk really quickly? We have one call. We have 15 minutes left. So you mentioned Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And Felger Mazur in your head, and now you're telling everybody he's actually a bust. So my 2 thoughts on Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah. I didn't realize I was being that harsh.
You're being harsh. One, I agree that he hasn't been like straps on, lockdown, Stephon Gilmore in his prime.
Yeah.
He was probably had a better rookie camp than he had this camp so far. The one reason why I tell people not to panic is when I watch him, I feel like everything gets downloaded into the computer in his head, where like he's learning guys, he's like learning routes, he's learning what he can and can't do. Like it always feels like he's like in this zone, right, where he's like thinking these things through. And a lot of times with corners, in practice, it's a lot of trial and error of like, can I do this? Like, can I do that? That sort of thing. And I almost feel like he's so confident at this point that he belongs in the league that he doesn't have anything to prove. Whereas his rookie season, he felt like he needed to solidify himself as an NFL player. Now he's an NFL player, and my guess is that when the light needs to turn on, and he needs to hit that switch, I think he'll hit it.
I also wonder if there's some he hasn't played competitive football in 10 months, 11 months.
Yeah, I asked him about that, like it maybe some sea legs, like trying to get the speed of the game back and all that kind of stuff. I'm not worried about Christian Gonzalez at all. I just feel like he's one of those guys, and he's also like a mild-tempered guy that game day is going to be a little bit different for him than the practices.
All right, you want to take this call first or kickers?
Yeah, let's do we're doing kickers?
We have to. They've done special teams, Evan.
Have they?
Yes.
I fall asleep at that time. All right, Tommy's in Omaha. What's up, Tommy?
Hey, guys. How are y'all today?
Hey.
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, I had a question for you. This is the first camp in memory that I've paid attention to where it seems like the offensive line sounds competent and the receivers sound competent. I guess my overlying question is, and y'all are seeing this in person compared to me all the way over here in Omaha, what is the biggest difference when it comes to the receivers and offensive line this year? Is it maybe the attention to detail by the coaching staff and having more specialized coaches actually working with them hands-on? Or is it the change in the offensive system as far as the responsibilities have gotten simpler and not as much as asked of the receivers and the offensive line?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Tommy, and thanks for the call. The way I see it, just from an execution standpoint, it seems to me right now like the 5 guys are playing on a string. Like it doesn't feel like in other camps when we've watched their line the last couple of years, it feels like just a jumbled mess of blockers inside, and the guys are not necessarily tied together, right? And offensive line is one of those positions where it's probably the only position really where it's a unit. It's not
right.
an individual. It's a 5-man unit that needs to be seeing it through the same set of eyes, as Dante Scarnecchia would say. And right now, I've liked what I've seen so far in the early going that they've been doing that. Now, is that scheme? Is that coaching? It's kind of hard to say which one that is without being in the meetings and stuff like that. But whatever they're doing, it seems like they are more tied together than they have been the last couple of years.
Speaking of Nebraska, by the way, you see their new quarterback?
No.
So they got this quarterback, Dylan Raiola. He's the number 1 quarterback in the nation.
Yeah.
He decommitted from Georgia to go to Nebraska.
Yeah.
There's a picture of him. I'm going to pull his picture up and show you on the air. So his whole thing is he's trying to be Patrick Mahomes. That's like, I think I texted you this last night.
I'm trying to be Kobe Bryant.
No, but like he has the same daily routine. He has the same diet. He has the same quarterbacks coach.
Does he sound like Kermit the Frog?
He's probably trying to. I texted you this picture last night. He showed up yesterday, Evan, at their facility. Same haircut, same facial hair, same sunglasses.
That's not Patrick.
That's
Mahomes.
not Patrick Mahomes. That's Dylan Raiola. And when you
that's
watch,
not Mrs. Mahomes, so I can.
When I don't know if people can see this on camera. When you watch him on the field,
Why is
he
this
has like
coming
the
up?
same mannerism. It's going to be really because for years I just brought it up because
he's from Omaha.
I just brought it up because I heard Nebraska and we have 10 minutes to go. But it's also I don't know.
We had some real stuff to talk about.
I know we do. Well, you got annoyed with the kickers. It's going to be interesting because we heard quarterback after quarterback trying to be Brady. This is like, it made me feel old. Mahomes is a guy they're emulating. You're going to really like Dylan Raiola.
Okay, so we have one email I want to get to.
All right.
We have 10 minutes. So I have a couple minutes for the email and a couple minutes for your kickers. All right. Which one do you want to do first?
Let's do the kickers. Let's get that out of the way.
Go ahead. Tell me what you see.
Chad Ryland's 12 of 13. Joey Sly's 11 of 13.
Chad Ryland, by an inch.
He's doing something different with the ball because at least today, in the last couple of days, the way it comes off his foot, it looks like it's going to miss, and he's put like a curve on it, like a late curve on it. I don't know what that is. It's different. We'll see. I don't think either of them have separated, though, through a week. I still think that thing's wide open.
So we don't know, is what you're saying.
We don't know, but they're actually kicking now.
It's going to be interesting.
Sly put some he put some oomph on the ball. I'll say that.
It's going to be interesting to see how they split those up in the preseason because, remember, like Ryland didn't kick, right?
Well, they only had like one field goal attempt in the 3 games.
I guess hopefully they move the ball a little bit better.
Yeah.
They can kick some more field goals. All right, so we got an email here from Ben in the UK that asked, do you think that the AVP, Alex Van Pelt's scheme, actually fits Drake May's skill set? And would he be better off with a more modern West Coast scheme? I think this is a really interesting question because I've hand up fully thought that he was going to be a great fit in the scheme.
Yeah.
I was more thinking, though, about the early down shots, right, off of play action and stuff like that, and the moving pockets and the deep throws. The Browns, I looked this up. We looked this up, I think, last week, that they were 8th in the league in ADOT, right, among their quarterbacks. Like, they are a chuck it down the field type of team. And what better way to get the most out of Drake May than to let him sling it down the field, which is what he does best. Now, their passing game, like their traditional drop back pass game, no play action, is at its roots old school West Coast. It's really like Mike McCarthy, Green Bay, West Coast. And those teams haven't necessarily, there's 2 different West Coast branches. There's the Andy Reid branch, right, which is over here. And that is what, it's not my phrase, I'll give Lombardi credit. Michael Lombardi basically coined that as West Coast college, right? So what that is it's essentially West Coast spread, right? So they have spread elements, air raid elements within the framework of a West Coast offense. Then the other like the fork in the road, right? The other is the Shanahan tree, right? And they have dressed up the traditional West Coast with motion, condensed formations. It's all about spacing, right? And creating space on the field. The Alex Van Pelt offense and the Mike McCarthy offense in Dallas is lagging behind maybe a little bit. And this is one of the criticisms of the hire to begin with. They are still running the Bill Walsh West Coast offense for the most part. The old 49ers in the 80s West Coast offense. So he's not going to do the crazy motions that in formations that Mike McDaniel and Shanahan and McVay do in LaFleur. He's not going to do the air raid elements, the spread, the RPO, all that kind of stuff. My concern with Drake May is that to run the old school West Coast, rhythm is so important. And remember when we talked in the spring about left foot forward and all that kind of stuff? All of that is there to create rhythm within the offense so that your steps sequence together and then line up with the routes. In order to teach a quarterback that struggles with footwork to execute that kind of offense is giving me a little bit of concern with the fit. But my guess is that if Alex Van Pelt has the chops, is that the pivot is probably closer to the read tree, because the read tree passing game is basically the same, but they spread the field more. It's Mahomes more in the gun. There's RPO, and then there's also playground. There's also second reaction. And all of the second reaction stuff that the Chiefs do with Patrick Mahomes is all scripted. Like, that's not just like everybody just run around, right? Like, everybody has rules within the framework of the offense of, like, when Patrick Mahomes breaks the pocket, this is how we're going to get open for him down the field. There's nobody better at it than Kelsey. I think Kelsey's probably the best playground receiver I've ever seen. He's awesome at it. So what's the way that they go? If they ask him to execute in a traditional West Coast and there's no read element to it and there's no Shanahan element to it, I think that we're gonna continue to see some of the issues that have popped up. So, long-winded answer to the question: is he a good fit in the system? Yes, if they cater it to him. If they are going to try to jam him into the McCarthy system, there could be some issues with that. And
that's the case for any quarterback.
It's too early. Like, it's too early to say that that's what they're going to do. But like, a lot of the McCarthy stuff is really, really based on timing and rhythm and getting the football out. And that is different, than what they're asking him to do now. I think Dak has gotten really good at it down there in Dallas over the last, year plus. So we'll see. But that's what I'm seeing with Drake May right now, is that those elements of their drop back pass game are really asking him to play on time. And when it's hard to do if you're if the type of quarterback that he is.
So I guess I'll just add to that. I think physically he's a fit, and this is something we talked about during the draft. The kind of throws you need to make, it's a lot over the middle between the numbers, right, to the deeper parts of the field.
Yeah.
In that sense, he's a great fit because that's a lot of what he did at North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's, to your whole point, everything you just said, it's the mental side of it where there needs to be maybe more of a marriage between what they want to do and what his skill set is.
It's a perfect way of putting it, because like, the areas of the field that they want to attack are all areas that he loves to attack.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the way they it's the presentation of the play.
Right.
It's the drop. It's the timing of the route. It's all that kind of stuff that right now is where he's having the most problems.
Which, again, is not that unusual for any young quarterback. That was the whole thing with Mac Jones. And I've seen people say, well, Mac Jones was so good right away, and what does it mean that Drake May isn't when Mac wasn't good? Because that was the one thing Mac Jones had figured out. Before he got sped up beyond belief, he knew what he was looking at coming in, like few rookie quarterbacks do. The problem is he didn't have the physical traits to properly make use of that.
We're Benjamin buttoning this. It's going to be in reverse.
It's the exact opposite. But the difference is, I would rather teach a guy with all the physical tools how to read a field than just hope a guy who can read the field magically develops these physical tools he's never had, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I just hope that I've thought about this a little bit, as you can tell. I love Shanahan. I love Shanahan. But
a little too much.
Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, McDaniel, those guys are brilliant offensive minds. And not that Andy Reid isn't.
Right.
But if I had to design an offense from the West Coast tree and add elements, I think it's probably easier to add the Reid elements than it is to the Shanahan elements. Because the Shanahan elements is all, it's like,
it's
really
complex.
Yeah, really complex.
Yeah.
So I think the Reid elements is more in there. That's spread the field, gun, RPO.
It's also
all that
probably,
kind of
in this specific case, it's probably closer to what he did at UNC.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Phil Longo, Chip Lindsey were his two OCs at UNC. They're air raid guys. Chip Lindsey got mad at me when I called him an air raid guy, but no offense, Chip, you are an air raid guy.
Well, Phil Longo's like one of the OG, like,
yes. Yes.
Did he? He didn't coach for Leach. He coached for
I think the other guy.
There's three. There's Hal Mummy and there's Mouse Davis.
Yeah.
Who are the ones who taught Leach.
Yeah. So in order to get to like right now we're talking about base offenses.
Yeah.
In this time of training camp. Once like year 2, year 3 of Drake May, like once we start to get to like the advanced stage of his development, then I think we start talking about branching into the read tree of things and adding UNC style spread air raid elements to the traditional West Coast and creating a West Coast college scheme here in New England, which is what would fit Drake May perfectly. So they're getting there. It's early. Don't panic.
Oh, and Longo did coach under Mike Leach. I had that wrong. But,
okay. He's at Wisconsin now.
Yeah. So
good, nice guy. I talked to him.
Him at Wisconsin. Him in the Big Ten is going to be interesting. Remember we did 2 years of Alabama-fy the offense?
Yes.
Are we going to be UNC-ify, North Carolina-fy the offense?
Well, North Carolina's offense kind of like schematically kind of stunk. But like air raiding it or like reading it, I think is probably would be more optimistic, right? I don't think you want to be North Carolina, but I think you definitely need to. You need to put some more college style elements. Like if you're going to ask him to be pro style and you're going to ask him to be this timing and rhythm quarterback, I do think early on, especially in his career, there's going to be some issues with that because his timing and his anticipation just isn't there yet.
Okay, here we go. I knew there was a connection. I couldn't remember what it was. Longo never coached for Mike Leach, but like they were like friends, and he got it from Leach, but he never worked for him. He learned it from Leach, but like off the job.
Yeah. All right, we got to wrap. We'll be back next week. We're going to do Wednesday next week because the preseason game, believe it or not, we're already at the preseason game, is next Thursday. So that's going to be, Patriots preview show, post-game show, that whole game day gamut. So we're going to do the show at 1 o'clock next Wednesday to recap the days, and we'll talk a little bit about the preseason game as well, I'm sure. Just a quick few sign-offs here. Bridgestone, the official tire of the New England Patriots, is proud to partner with Sullivan Tire, New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you. And easy to drink, easy to enjoy. I'm going to go have one right now. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.